The call came on a Tuesday, which I remember because Tuesdays are when I stay late to set up the science center for the next week's rotations, and I had my hands full of plastic bins and seed packets when my phone rang from inside my tote bag. I almost didn't answer it. The number was a Halifax area code I didn't recognize, and I get enough calls about extended car warranties that I've learned to let things go to voicemail. But something made me put down the bins, fish the phone out from under my lunch container, and pick up. "Is this Willa?" the voice said. "Willa Hartwell." "Speaking," I said. "My name is Robert Arsenault. I'm a solicitor with Arsenault and Morin in Halifax. I'm calling because I need to speak with you about your great-aunt's estate." I sat down on the floor of my classroom right there, between the reading corner and the window, where my students had taped their drawings of clouds. My great-aunt Pauline had died 6 days earlier. My father had called to tell me on the Wednesday before, in the same flat, efficient voice he uses for everything. A voice that made it clear the conversation was informational, not emotional. My great-aunt, his mother's sister. A woman who had, according to my father, made a series of poor choices throughout her life, and therefore deserved whatever she got. I had sent flowers to the funeral home and not attended, because I hadn't been invited, and because I hadn't seen Pauline in 11 years. And because, and this is the part I'd never said out loud to anyone, I was afraid of what it would feel like to be in a room full of family members who looked right through me. "Miss Hartwell?" Robert Arsenault said. "Sorry," I said. "Yes, I'm here. Your great-aunt named you as the sole beneficiary of her estate. I'd like to arrange a time to meet with you in person to go over the details, but I can tell you that the estate is substantial." Pauline Hartwell's total assets, including her home, her investment accounts, and a rental property in Dartmouth, have been assessed at approximately $2.4 million. I looked at the cloud drawings on my window. One of my students, a 7-year-old named Theo, had drawn his cloud with a face. It was smiling. "I'm sorry," I said. "Could you say that again?" He said it again. "I should tell you about my family so that what comes next makes sense. I am the youngest of 3 children. My brother is 5 years older than me, and my sister is 6 years older, and they have always been, in the language of our household, the ones who turned out well. My brother is a contractor, who owns his own company in Moncton, and who my father talks about with a kind of quiet reverence, usually reserved for hockey players, and people who don't complain about the cold. My sister married early, has 3 children, and lives 12 minutes from my parents, which means she appears at every Sunday dinner, without fail, and receives, in return, the full warmth of my parents' approval. I became an elementary school teacher. I moved to Halifax for the job, and because I love Halifax, the way the fog bog comes in, off the harbor, the farmers' markets in the summer, the way the city feels like it's actually sized for human beings. I taught grade 3 at a public school in the North End, and I loved my work with the specific private kind of love that doesn't photograph well and doesn't come up naturally at family dinners. My parents were not unkind to me. I want to be clear about that. They fed me and clothed me and paid for my education. But there was always a sense, growing up, that I was slightly beside the point. My brother was the one my father took fishing. My sister was the one my mother called every morning. I was the one who read too many books, asked too many questions, and cried at television commercials, which my father found embarrassing. My great-aunt Pauline was my father's aunt, his mother's younger sister. She had never married, had no children, had spent her career as an accountant, and then, after she retired, as a volunteer tax preparer for low-income families, through a program at a local community center. She lived alone in a house in the south end of Halifax, which she had owned since 1987 and kept immaculate. I had loved her completely when I was young. She used to take me to the public library on Saturdays when I was in grade school, just the 2 of us, and she'd let me pick 3 books, and then we'd go to the Tim Hortons on Spring Garden and drink hot chocolate, and she'd ask me what I thought about things. Not how school was going, not whether I'd made the basketball team, what I thought about things, about the world, about people, about what I wanted my life to feel like. No one else had ever asked me that. The last time I saw her, I was 23. I had just started my first year of teaching, and I drove out to Halifax to visit her in November. She made chowder and we sat at her kitchen table, and she told me she was proud of me. She said it plainly, without qualification. Not "I'm proud of you," but "or I'm proud of you, I just wish." Just the thing itself. Complete. After that, my father made it clear that contact with Pauline was complicated. There had been a falling out, years earlier. Something about money. Something about my grandmother's will. Something I was never given the full story of. My father didn't yell. He didn't forbid anything. He just made it clear, in the way he had always made things clear, that choosing to have a relationship with Pauline would be a statement about where my loyalties lay. And I was 23 and still, in ways I'm not proud of, trying to earn something from him. So I let the visit stop. I sent a card at Christmas every year. I told myself I'd reconnect when things calmed down. They never calmed down, and then she died. I drove to the solicitor's office on the Thursday after Robert Arsenault called me. I wore my nicest blazer and brought a notepad, as though I were attending a job interview, which is what I do when I'm nervous. Robert Arsenault was a soft-spoken man in his 60s with reading glasses on a chain around his neck, and he walked me through everything with the kind of patient, methodical clarity that I found deeply soothing. The house in the South End, assessed at $1.1 million, the Dartmouth rental property, assessed at $480,000, an investment portfolio through a firm in downtown Halifax, $920,000, some GECs, some savings bonds, a checking account with $43,000 in it. Total, just over $2.4 million. Your great-aunt revised her will 14 months ago, he said. Prior to that revision, the estate was divided among several beneficiaries. After the revision, she named you as the sole recipient of everything, with the exception of a bequest of $25,000 to the Community Links tax assistance program she volunteered with. I looked at the papers in front of me. What made her change it? He folded his hands. She didn't share her reasons with me, but she was very deliberate about the change. She came in twice to discuss it, asked a number of careful questions about how to protect the assets, and seemed, to my observation, at peace with her decision. I drove home along the waterfront afterward and parked in front of my apartment building and sat in my car for 20 minutes, looking at the harbor. Pauline had known, when she revised that will, that she was choosing me. She had looked at her whole family and decided, and she'd done it quietly without telling anyone, and then she had lived her last 14 months attending her volunteer sessions and going to the farmer's market and not saying a word. That is, exactly and entirely, who she was. I didn't call my parents right away. I'm not entirely sure why. Something protective, maybe, or something that knew, already, what was coming. I called my closest friend, who told me to get a financial advisor and a separate lawyer before I did anything else. I called the number Robert Arsenault had given me for an estates specialist and made an appointment. I went to school the next day and taught a lesson about weather patterns, and helped a kid named Amara tie her boots 4 times, because she kept doing the loops wrong. And the whole day felt slightly unreal, like watching myself on a screen. My father called. On the Saturday. I heard from your cousin that there's been some news about Pauline's estate, he said. I'd been half expecting it, but my stomach dropped anyway. Who told you? Does it matter? Is it true you've been named the beneficiary? Yes, I said. There was a silence, then. That's a mistake. She meant to update it and never got around to it. The assets should be divided between the family. I want to describe that sentence accurately so you understand what I felt when I heard it. My father didn't say she would have wanted it divided. He didn't say it seemed unfair. He said it was a mistake, as though the problem were administrative, clerical, just a thing that needed to be corrected. As though Pauline, who had worked as an accountant for 30 years, who had revised her will twice with the assistance of a solicitor and taken care to protect every detail, had simply forgotten to update a form. She met with a lawyer twice about this, I said. It wasn't a mistake. Willa. His voice shifted into the register I have known since I was 8 years old. The one that means I am being unreasonable, that I am making things harder than they need to be. The right thing to do here is to share what she left. Your brother and your sister and your mother and I, we're family. Pauline was family. Whatever happened between her and me years ago has nothing to do with this. She made her choice, I said. I need to respect it. He hung up. My mother called an hour later. My mother approaches difficult conversations the way you'd approach a shoreline in winter. Carefully, always testing where she's putting her foot. She asked how I was doing. She asked about my classroom. She mentioned gently that my father was very upset. She mentioned, less gently, that the house alone was worth over $1 million, and that my brother had been having a difficult year with his business and that my sister's youngest needed orthodontic work. I hear you, I said, but it's not my money to give away. It's not Pauline's either, she said, now that she's gone. I didn't say what I was thinking, which was that it was absolutely Pauline's money, that Pauline had earned it and saved it and allocated it precisely as she chose, and that the idea that death somehow transferred moral ownership to the nearest living relatives was exactly the kind of logic that let families devour each other. Instead I said, I need some time to think, Mum. I'll call you soon. I didn't sleep well that night. Not because I doubted myself. I had read the will. I had sat with Robert Arsenault. I understood exactly what Pauline had intended. But because there is something about being pressured by your parents, even when you are a grown adult, that reaches down into the oldest part of you and squeezes. My brother texted 3 days later. He didn't ask how I was doing. He didn't reference the funeral, or Pauline, or anything personal. He said, we should talk about the estate. It's not fair to keep everything. Call me. I didn't call him. My sister came to Halifax. She didn't tell me she was coming. She rang my buzzer on a Wednesday evening, and when I answered the intercom she said, it's me. Can I come up? And because she is my sister, because I hadn't seen her in 8 months, because some part of me still hoped we could be the kind of siblings who actually talk. I buzzed her in. She sat on my couch and accepted the tea I made here, and looked around my apartment with the careful expression of someone determined not to comment on it. I have a small apartment. A galley kitchen, a living room with good windows, a bedroom, and a bathroom with a tile I've been meaning to replace since I moved in. I have bookshelves that are overfull, and plants on every windowsill, and a kitchen table with mismatched chairs that I love. My sister's house has heated floors. I'm not here to fight, she said, which is something people say when they are about to fight. Okay, I said. I just think you need to think about what kind of family you want to have. Dad is hurt. Mum is hurt. And they're not wrong to feel that way. Pauline didn't leave it to them, I said. She left it to me, because you cut us off from her. Her voice was careful, but the words were not. After the thing with Grandma's will, you were the only one who kept in touch with her. Of course she left it to you, but that doesn't make it fair. I put my tea down. I didn't keep in touch with her, I said. I stopped. Because Dad made it clear that was what he wanted. I stopped visiting. I stopped calling. I sent a card at Christmas and that was it. For 11 years, my sister looked at me. Something moved across her face that I couldn't quite read. So she left it to you anyway, she said after a moment. She left it to me anyway. The thing I didn't know, until Robert Arsenault told me a month later when we met to begin the process of transferring the estate, was that Pauline had written me a letter. It had been kept with the will, sealed, to be given to me once the legalities were underway. It was 4 pages, handwritten on paper from a pad with a blue border that I recognized from her kitchen table when I was small. I'm not going to share all of it. Some of it is mine. But there is one part I keep coming back to. She wrote, I know your father will be angry. I know your brother and sister will feel entitled to what I've saved. People often feel entitled to things that were never theirs. But Willa, I've watched you from a distance for 11 years, and I know you've been told, in 100 small ways, that you are not enough. I want to say plainly, you are more than enough. You are exactly who I always thought you'd be. This isn't a mistake. This is me telling you so. I sat in my car in the parking garage underneath the solicitor's building and read that letter 3 times and cried until my eyes hurt. She had watched me from a distance for 11 years. She had still seen me. My father called the week after I got the letter. He had consulted someone, a friend of a friend, a man who apparently knew about these things, and he wanted to let me know that it might be possible to contest the will on the basis that Pauline had been unduly influenced, that I had maintained contact with her specifically to isolate her from the rest of the family and position myself on to inherit. I let him finish. Then I said, quietly, Dad, I haven't spoken to her in 11 years. I didn't visit her. I didn't call her. The last time I saw her, I was 23 and she made chowder and told me she was proud of me. And then I let our relationship go because I was trying to make things easier for you. If you want to contest the will, that is your legal right. But you should know that the file will show that the revision happened 14 months ago, that she met with her solicitor twice, and that in those 11 years, the only contact I had with her was a Christmas card I mailed every December. 1 card. Per year. That was my undue influence. There was a long silence. I'm disappointed in you, my father said. It is a strange thing, at 31, to hear your father say he is disappointed in you and to feel, not devastation, not the old familiar collapse, but something closer to calm. I know, I said. I'm sorry about that. He hung up. The process of settling the estate took several months. I hired an estate's lawyer, a woman named, well, it doesn't matter what her name was. She was thorough and practical, and she dealt with the paperwork in a way that I found deeply comforting. She also told me, when I asked about the possibility of my father contesting, that the case would be extremely weak given the evidence, and that she had dealt with this kind of family pressure before. It almost always looks the same, she said. Someone leaves a will that doesn't match what the family expected. The family calls it a mistake. They look for someone to blame. But courts in Nova Scotia take testamentary capacity seriously, and your great-aunt's will is clear. I moved into Pauline's house in the spring. I hadn't planned to. I had a lease on my apartment and a life that mostly fit inside it. But I walked through the house with Robert Arsenault when the transfer was complete, and I walked into her kitchen, and there on the counter was the blue-bordered notepad she'd written my letter on. And there on the windowsill above the sink were 3 small terracotta pots with herbs growing in them. And I thought, she was here yesterday, in a way. In all the ways that count. I called my landlord and gave my notice. My sister reached out in June. Not my brother, he hasn't spoken to me since the text. My father calls once a month, and the calls are short, and they are mostly about the weather and my nephew's hockey and nothing real. But my sister came to Halifax again, this time telling me in advance, and this time she sat at Pauline's kitchen table. My kitchen table now, and she looked different. I've been thinking about what you said, she told me, about stopping contact because of Dad. Yeah, I said. I didn't know you'd done that. I thought you just drifted away from her on your own. I thought you knew. She shook her head. We sat with that for a while. She would have left it to someone, my sister said, finally. If not you, then the tax program. She wasn't going to leave it to Dad, and I think part of me knew that. I just didn't want to think about what that meant. I poured her more tea. I've been thinking about what to do with the Dartmouth property, I told her. Pauline used to talk about affordable housing. The rental income right now goes to a family who've been there 9 years, and the rent she charged them was genuinely fair, below market. I'm going to keep them there. And I've been looking at some programs through Dalhousie, grants for community housing initiatives, something about partnering with local organizations. My sister looked at me for a moment. That sounds like her. Yeah, I said. It really does. I still teach grade 3. People ask me sometimes whether I'm going to stop, whether I'm going to do something different now, whether the money changes things, and I understand why they ask. But I think they might have the logic slightly backwards. I teach because I love children at that age specifically. The way they are still undefended. The way they arrive at your door, every September, with their whole selves intact, before the world gets a chance to tell them which parts of themselves are acceptable. I was 31 years old before I got a letter telling me I was more than enough. I would like, if I can manage it, to make sure the kids in my class don't wait that long. The investment portfolio I've kept largely in place, with the help of a fee-only financial advisor I found through a professional referral program in Halifax. The GICs have rolled over. The savings bonds sit in a registered account. I am not particularly interested in becoming a different kind of person, because I have more money. I am interested in keeping the herb pots alive on the kitchen windowsill, and getting through to May without losing anyone's mittens. Pauline's kitchen table has a small burn mark near the edge, from a candle that must have tipped at some point decades ago. I run my finger over it sometimes when I'm sitting with my morning coffee. I don't know the story of how it happened. I'll never know, but I'm glad to be the one who gets to sit here and wonder.